Hello, friends. Welcome to our episode today. We're going to be talking about integrating our faith into daily living.
You know, we've kind of got this idea from you guys. We do Bible studies with a lot of you, or almost all of you, and we know that you have a heart for living your faith. And so as we were thinking about you guys, Sue and I thought, well, you know, why don't we just put together a little message once in a while, a little Bible study for our friends, and maybe this can help inspire you or motivate you or whatever as you go out into the world to be able to present your faith and really live your faith.
The basis of our episode today and talking about integrating our faith into our daily living is going to be Acts 8. And in particular, the verse we're going to focus on is verse 4, and this is from the New Living Translation. But the believers who were scattered preached the good news about Jesus wherever they went. And we know in Acts 8, we learn about the persecution of the Christians. The high priests wanted to get them out of there. They wanted to squelch the Christianity movement that was going on. They didn't want that spread across Israel. But one of the chief persecutors was Saul before he became Paul. And he actually was employed by the high priest to go out and find the Christians, find those that were spreading the word, and to take them to prison, and likely they were killed. In fact, there was so much persecution and people being afraid because he would go into meetings, drag people out. He would go into the home day or night, men or women, men and women, and drag them out. So there was such fear in the people in that persecution. Well, the scattering that is referred to in verse 4 is talking about preachers that went out to Samaria and to preach the word and to talk about Jesus there. They were scattered, but everywhere they went, Samaria, Judea, they left Jerusalem and went out to spread the word. The disciples did tally for a while in Jerusalem before they went out and did more spreading of the word. But that's what we want to discuss today, is that faith that can be brought into our daily life and talk about it with other people. And just recently, one of our friends, Mary Jane, passed away. And Mary Jane and her husband, Ted, were in a Bible study with us for about 8 years. And it was hosted by John and Jerry, and in their home. And we would talk about topics relevant to the times. Well, one of the stories that came out in the eulogy from Mary Jane yesterday at her funeral was just talking about how strategic she was in talking to people about Jesus. And I think her strategy that impressed me so much is she was a very soft-spoken person, always happy, always joyous, always a smile on her face. One that did a lot of baking of cookies. And what she would do often is, maybe if it was a new neighbor that moved into their area, their neighborhood, she would take a bag of cookies or a container of cookies, present it to them, visit with them a little bit, get to know their story. And oftentimes, before maybe she even left, she'd be telling them about Jesus, praying with them. Other stories of Mary Jane's strategies, she started a ministry in a nursing home with some of her friends, and they would go and get to know the residents and pray with them, talk about the gospel. Well, they also got to know, and Mary Jane in particular got to know the staff as well. So one of the staff members really did not like her. She kind of turned the other way when Mary Jane would come in. And that just made Mary Jane want to persist that woman even more. It was a janitor, and she just tried to talk to her. Finally, the lady let her talk to her, and they Mary Jane found out that this lady actually had a terminal illness. So Mary Jane was talking to her, praying over her, actually led her to the Lord. And in her final days, Mary Jane was there with her, talking to her, praying for her. Those are just a few things of Mary Jane. And another one I really like is she would, in Carrollton, on some corner in Carrollton, she saw a homeless man. Well, she pulled over, she talked to him, prayed with him, and then she'd come back times and bring him food and do the same thing, pray with him and talk with him. Very strategic in how she interacted with people. And she was a kind person, and her daughter said in the eulogy yesterday that she was a very kind person and taught her how to give kindness to others, and that was so important She said she was a tough mother, but she taught her kindness. So in our going out and talking and spreading the word anywhere, those are the kind of memories I like to think about when I go do that as well.
And I think one of the things about Mary Jane that impressed us, as Sue said, was her intentionality. Her family said that she did this regularly, but she did it on purpose. It was not just a reflex. Her teaching Jesus and sharing the love of Jesus was something that she did intentionally. And something that's happened, Sue mentioned in Acts 8 how persecution broke out against the Jerusalem church, and the people were scattered. A very interesting phrase to me is in at the end of verse 1, Acts 8 verse 1, it says, "And they were all scattered throughout the regions of Judea and Samaria, except the apostles." Can you picture that? The big guys, the guys who were really the authorities, and the ones who had known Jesus and were the primary teachers and the ones who had originally revealed the gospel, got left behind. For whatever reason, God scattered the students of the apostles. That's really interesting, isn't it? The students got scattered, not the big pros. Well, we're coming through a persecution now, the pandemic, and that has changed a lot of ways that we organize ourselves. And if there is a parallel maybe between the guys in Acts 8 who got scattered and went out and preached to all new people, and the experts got left behind, maybe there's something there for you and me. Maybe that kind of says, as the old thing gets left behind, there's more responsibility given to folks like you and me to do this stuff. When we read about Philip in Acts 8, and he was one of the people in that chapter, it is not the Apostle Philip. We know that one of Jesus' disciples was a guy named Philip. This is a different Philip. This is somebody that came along after Jesus. And after all of that, he was a member of the very new church, a very active member, an inspired member, from all we can tell. And he was one of the ones that was pushed out of Jerusalem by this persecution and out into the world. And it says in Acts 8 that the Holy Spirit told Philip to do things. The primary story in Acts 8, we know, is the conversion of this African authority of one of the queens in Africa, the Queen of Ethiopia. This guy who was an official in her court happened to be in that area, and the Holy Spirit told Philip, go up and talk to this guy. And he was reading the Old Testament, and he had questions about it. And Acts 8 tells us that this inspired young new Christian who had learned from the apostles then explained to this Ethiopian authority what he was reading in Isaiah. And he was reading a prophecy about who the Messiah was going to be. So Philip explained to him who Jesus was. And he just used it. Philip, though, was prepared, wasn't he? And I think this is a lesson for us, is we don't just go out into the world unprepared, thinking that life is going to do whatever it's going to do, and we'll just go along winging it. Surely we have to respond to unexpected things. But I think the challenge is for us, and if Sue and I have said that, a motivation for us to kind of put together these little messages for you, is we know who you guys are. We know your hearts and how you want to live Jesus and be somebody out in the workplace or at the store, restaurant, wherever, walking the dog around the block, whatever. We want to be ready to be able to tell people about Jesus. Philip was intentional about that. He knew ahead of time that this was an important thing to him. So the Holy Spirit knew that he could use Philip in this situation. So that's just an inspiration to me. And then as we know, the African authority, the court, this person, they call him a eunuch, that he accepted Jesus and he was baptized. And then the end of chapter 8, I like this too. It says in verse 39, now when they came up out of the water, the Spirit of the Lord caught Philip away, so that the eunuch saw him no more, and he went on his way rejoicing. But Philip was found at Azotus, and passing through he preached in all the cities till he came to Caesarea. What a cool ending. We've got this African official from Ethiopia who receives Jesus, is baptized. Philip ends up disappearing, but it didn't seem to bother this guy that much. He just goes rolling down the road rejoicing, as happy as can be. And then the Spirit had taken Philip onto his next assignment. And it says Philip was found in Azotus. And who knows where that is, but it's another city around there somewhere. Philip just continually being led by the Spirit. So we want that, don't we, in our lives? We want to be able to be led by the Spirit, to be comfortable and enthusiastic about sharing Jesus or sharing whatever the Lord would put on our hearts with an individual that we come across in daily life. And then that individual is going to be changed. And then God will take us on to our next thing. It's such a wonderful adventure when we see our lives as something where we go from place to place, but in every place we go, we're being led by God, and we just have something very positive to share with other people.
And I think, Ken, after being at the funeral yesterday and hearing the eulogies of Mary Jane, and the thing that stuck out for me is that she was strategic. Intentionality, as you talk about. Doug talked to our group a week ago about intentionality. Do you have a plan? Are you determined how you're going to do this? And I liked how Mary Jane did have a strategic plan, and we didn't even know it. She brought cookies. That was one of her great things. She was such a baker. But she was soft and easy and came in and got to know them. And I think that's the thing. Get to know people, and learn their story. And how can you apply the word to their story? And of course, pray with them, pray for them. And if you lead them to the Lord, wow, you're making a disciple. So we encourage you to continue doing what you're doing. We know you guys, you do great. And we look forward to seeing you soon.